December 18, 1944, the Ardennes forest near the Belgian border. Snow drifted through the towering firs like slow-falling ash, settling on the branches in delicate sheets that cracked at the slightest disturbance. The air carried a sharp stillness, the kind that seemed to hold its breath. On mornings like this, sound traveled farther than truth, and truth in these woods was already a fragile thing. Private Louis Grant moved quietly between the frostbitten trees, his footfalls softened by inches of snow. At 18, he was the youngest in his ammunition detail and one of the first Montford Point Marines ever reassigned this deep into Europe. The Army called his detachment temporary support personnel, but no one ever explained why that support seemed to disappear from official paperwork. Louis didn't question it. He'd learned early at Montford Point in North Carolina and long before that in rural Mississippi that questions were a luxury men like him could rarely afford. If you love stories like this, real courage, real history, then don't just watch, become part of it. Subscribe now to WW2 Frontline Legends and stand with the people who keep this history alive. What he didn't know was this. The forest around him felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. The kind of stillness that made the hairs on a man's neck twitch before his mind could piece the danger together. He carried no rifle, only a small pack slung across his shoulder and a pocket knife tucked behind his belt buckle. His weapon, if it could be called that, lay in his right hand. A worn slingshot carved from hickory which he'd shaped himself before boot camp. Back home, the thing had been a toy, something to impress cousins, knock tin cans off fence posts, or send a rabbit rolling through the brush. But here, in the frozen silence of the Ardennes, it was all he had. A supply convoy had fallen under attack the night before. Rifles scattered, crates overturned, ammunition lost beneath the snow. When the smoke cleared, Louis was left with nothing more than his pack, his sling, and the cold fear of knowing he'd have to cross 2 miles of forest alone to return to the rest of his unit. His breath fogged in front of him as he advanced, each inhalation cutting at his throat like glass. The deeper he moved into the trees, the more he felt watched. He paused, pressing his back against a pine trunk, listening. His grandfather had taught him to listen for more than sound, to listen for what should be there, but wasn't. No crows, no rustling, not even the groan of swaying branches. Something was hunting. He stepped forward, scanning the tree-line. That's when the first rifle shot tore through the quiet. The round slammed into the snow inches from his boot, sending frozen powder exploding upward in a blinding plume. Instinct took over. He dove behind the closest fallen log, heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped animal. A second shot followed, splintering bark above his head, showering him in a rain of shattered wood. The German sniper wasn't guessing. He was measuring. Louis pressed himself lower, tracking the echo. The angle felt wrong. Too far. Too deliberate. A hunter playing with his prey. He reached slowly into his pack, fingers brushing the cold steel of the ball bearings he'd saved from a busted ammo crate. Only a handful remained. His pulse steadied. His breathing slowed. The sling, for all its simplicity, felt like an extension of his arm, a familiar promise in a place that offered nothing familiar at all. He kept low, eyes scanning for movement. Snowflakes drifted lazily, but nothing else stirred. Then he saw it, a faint, fragile glint between branches deep in the tree-line. Glass catching winter light. A scope. The sniper had angled himself high, perched far beyond where any typical marksman would take position. 200 yards, maybe more. An impossible target for a slingshot. But Louis saw something the sniper didn't. The hide had a flaw, a narrow gap in the branches, invisible from above, but clear from the ground. It was a kind of mistake only someone who understood angles, wind, and nature's geometry would notice. Louis had learned all of that long before he ever held a uniform. He pulled a ball bearing from his pack, feeling its frozen weight press into his palm. His arm drew back, shoulders loose, breath held, time slowed. Then he released. The sling snapped with a soft whisper. The steel shot blurred into the cold air. For a moment there was only silence. Then a metallic crack. The glint of glass vanished. A shadow tumbled from the tree, falling through branches before slamming into the snow below. Louis's heart pounded. He stayed still, waiting for movement. The forest gave none. After several seconds, he rose from behind the log, eyes fixed on the distant shape crumpled in the snow. His steps were slow, cautious, deliberate. Every few paces, he paused, listening, watching. He approached the fallen sniper's nest, but the body wasn't there. Only a drag mark, long and jagged, cut through the snow, and beside it, a second set of footprints. Lewis froze. There had been two. The second had seen everything, and the trail led toward the direction of his unit. His fingers tightened around the slingshot. The hunt was no longer a question of survival. It was a race, and the forest cold now seemed to know it. Before he moved another inch, Lewis felt a new weight settle over him. Not fear, but the unmistakable knowledge that this moment, this chase, would decide far more than the fate of one Marine in a frozen forest. And if you're watching this unfold, hearing a story the records never wanted to tell, now is the perfect time to join us on WW2 Frontline Legends. Please share this video, like it, and subscribe for more untold stories. And before the trail gets colder, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Your support helps keep these forgotten legends alive. The snow kept falling, but something about it felt different now. Heavier, drifting in slow spirals that obscured distance and swallowed sound. The Ardennes had a way of turning men into ghosts, swallowing footprints, blurring shapes, and shifting shadows until nothing could be trusted. Lewis Grant knew this. Everyone who survived more than a week on this front knew this. But knowing it didn't make the forest any less merciless. He crouched near the drag trail, studying the pattern pressed into the snow. The first sniper had fallen hard. The indentation proved that, but the drag marks were smooth, deliberate. Someone had pulled the body with practiced speed. And the second set of footprints was deeper, heavier, spaced wider apart. This wasn't the work of a wounded man. The partner was strong, steady, and frighteningly composed. Lewis followed the tracks with measured steps, checking the tree-line with every breath. The Ardennes, wide and sprawling, held 1,000 places for a trained marksman to hide. He knew the second sniper could be watching him even now, adjusting his scope, waiting for the right angle. But waiting too long was an option. The footprints ran toward his unit, toward men who had no idea death was walking behind them. The wind shifted, carrying faint echoes through the trees. Not voices, not yet, but something moving, brushing against branches in the distance. It wasn't enough to locate the source, but enough to keep his nerves sharpened to a razor's edge. Lewis had always possessed the kind of instinct that came before thought. His grandfather had called it the whisper sense, a quiet signal in the gut that told a man when danger was stalking him instead of the other way around. And right now the whisper was screaming. He followed the tracks deeper into the woods until the snow thickened into a near whiteout. At times, he had to feel his way between trees to keep on course. The trail remained, barely visible beneath the drifts, but still present. Then the tracks stopped abruptly at the edge of a small clearing. The clearing was quiet, too quiet. The tracks disappeared into flattened snow that stretched across 20 yards of open space. Something had been here, several somethings. The snow was depressed in uneven patches, as though men had crouched low, waited, then dispersed. Lewis scanned every angle. A clearing that seemed empty was rarely empty. He moved along the edge, steps light, senses tuned. His breath curled upward in thin, white strands. He didn't dare exhale too loudly. Something in this clearing had gone wrong, or was about to. Then he saw it, a small metallic cylinder half buried beneath the snow. A ration tin, not American, German. It had been crushed beneath a boot, its lid warped, its edges pressed into the ice. It wasn't old. No frost under the rim, no signs of prolonged exposure. Someone had been here minutes ago. Lewis scanned the trees again, slower this time, eyes narrowing. The Germans were known for setting traps, especially snipers who worked in pairs. The first man in the tree, the one he'd knocked out of position, was likely the decoy. The second was the true threat, a professional, a ghost of the forest, and something about the clearing felt staged, as if someone wanted him to step into the open. He took one step back, just one, when a distant crack echoed through the trees. Not a rifle, a branch snapping. The sound came from behind him and to the left. Lewis dropped instantly, rolling behind the nearest fallen log, pressing himself against the frozen bark. His fingers tightened around the slingshot instinctively. His eyes traced the tree line, searching for movement. The forest answered with silence. Seconds passed like minutes. Then, through the curtain of snow, he saw it. A faint glimmer of frost reflecting off a rifle barrel tucked between two branches. It was pointed directly at the clearing where he'd been standing seconds before. The second sniper had anticipated him, had circled back, had waited, patient and invisible, for Lewis to step into the kill zone. But something was wrong. The barrel wasn't moving, not shifting, not breathing, not reacting to Lewis's movements. A chill ran through him. The sniper wasn't watching him. The barrel was angled toward the direction of Lewis's unit. The second shooter wasn't hunting him. He was holding position, waiting, calculating a shot that had nothing to do with Lewis at all. Lewis pressed deeper into the snow, trying to understand the angle. The sniper was stationed perfectly to strike the returning supply team, the very men Lewis had been trying to reach. The sniper wasn't chasing Lewis. He was using the commotion to mask his true goal. The first sniper had been the distraction. Lewis had stumbled into an operation already in motion. He steadied his breathing, piecing together the angles in his mind. 200 yards to the nest, a line of sight cutting through the trees toward an area his unit would cross during their morning shift. If the second sniper wasn't stopped, men he'd trained beside for months, men who still didn't fully trust him because of the uniform he wore and the color of his skin, would be dead before they even understood where the shot came from. Lewis had no rifle, no backup, no cover fire, only the cold, only the forest, only the slingshot in his hand. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory, quiet and steady. A real hunter doesn't choose his moment. He makes it. Lewis eased up from the snow, careful not to break the stillness around him. The second sniper hadn't seen him yet. The angle was steep, concealed by branches, but possible. He only needed one perfect shot, one impossible, unbelievable shot. And the fate of men who didn't even know his name would depend on whether he could make it. But the forest wasn't finished with its secrets yet, because just as Lewis raised his slingshot, ready to arc another steel bearing through the trees, he realized the two sets of footprints hadn't been the only ones in the snow. A third trail branched off into the shadows, faint but real. Someone else had been here. Someone who wasn't German. Someone who wasn't part of Lewis's unit. And that third trail disappeared toward the far side of the clearing, swallowed by the trees. Whatever operation he had walked into was larger, colder, and more complicated than he'd ever imagined. And he had seconds to decide which threat mattered most. The forest seemed to tighten around him as he stared at the three branching trails. The heavy drag marks of the first sniper, the deep rhythmic steps of the second, and the faint, almost weightless footprints of someone who didn't belong to either side. Snow drifted over the patterns faster now, threatening to erase everything the forest had revealed. Lewis knew he had only moments before the trails, and the choices they represented disappeared into the wind. He focused on the second sniper first. The rifle barrel still pointed toward the returning supply route, still locked in position, still waiting. That shot was coming. It wasn't a question of if, only when. His unit had no reason to expect danger. No scouts ahead, no cover. They would walk straight into the kill zone. Lewis felt the cold seep deeper into his bones as he studied the branches framing the sniper's nest. A clean shot from his slingshot would require perfect timing. A miscalculation of even half an inch would change the steel bearing's path completely. The forest wasn't still. It breathed, shifted, and swayed imperceptibly. And the wind carried stories of men who had tried shots like this before and failed. But Lewis had never lived by other men's stories. He'd lived by instinct. The same instinct that had guided him through Montford Point. The same instinct that had kept him alive in training that was designed to break him. The same instinct that had let him read a forest the way other men read maps. He held the slingshot steady, aligning the angle, listening to the trees as if they had voices. Each sway of branches became a rhythm. Each gust of wind became a cue. Each heartbeat became a tick of an unseen clock. But something tugged at him, a subtle awareness in the back of his mind. The third trail, the one that seemed too light, too careful, too deliberate to belong to a German sniper. He forced himself to look again at the prints. They were shaped differently. The stride was shorter, the depth lighter. A scout? A deserter? Someone observing the snipers from afar? The forest didn't hand out clear answers. It never had. The whisper sense returned, crawling like electricity across his skin. His grandfather had always said danger rarely traveled alone. It preferred company. And whatever moved through the Ardennes that morning wasn't just hunting or hiding. It was watching. Lewis lowered himself slightly, letting the weight of the slingshot rest against his palm. The third trail curved wider than the rest, as though its owner had approached the clearing, assessed the terrain, then backed away. But if that person had been here before the snipers fled, why had they left no sign of a struggle? Why no shell casings, no clues of intent, only footprints and snow? He forced his attention back to the sniper's nest. The second shooter remained motionless, fixed on his target. The shot had to be now. If he hesitated, the supply team would enter the clearing and never walk out again. Lewis exhaled a long, slow breath. His fingers tightened around the slingshot. Instinct aligned with urgency. Every ounce of his training, official and unofficial, converged. He drew back the sling. In that frozen instant, time stretched. The wind stilled. The forest held its breath. The weight of history balanced on a single steel bearing. Then he released. The bearing vanished into the trees, slicing through the cold air with a near-silent hiss. For a moment, it seemed swallowed by distance. Then a distant metallic ring echoed, faint, sharp, unmistakable. The sniper's rifle jerked sideways. A muffled grunt followed. The figure in the branches shifted violently, losing balance, limbs scrambling for support. Snow exploded downward as the sniper pitched from the nest, crashing into the drifts below. Lewis didn't wait for confirmation. He sprinted toward the clearing, boots punching through snow, lungs burning from the frigid air. He moved through the trees like a shadow, knowing the supply unit would soon appear along the trail. He needed to intercept them before they stumbled into whatever remained of the threat. But halfway across the clearing, he saw something that froze him. The drag marks of the first sniper had vanished completely under new snow, but a third set of footprints had returned. They crossed the clearing quietly, deliberately, moving toward the fallen sniper. Whoever it was had arrived moments before Lewis, as if summoned by the chaos. In the distance, a faint crunch of boots signaled his unit approaching. Lewis slowed, scanning the tree line for the mysterious figure. Only the trees greeted him. Only silence answered. He pressed forward, reaching the fallen sniper's position. The body lay face down in the snow, motionless. But something was missing. The rifle, the ammunition, all gone, stripped clean, taken by someone who didn't want this story to have evidence. Lewis crouched and found only one detail left behind, a small imprint in the snow beside the body, a boot print smaller and narrower than a soldier's. It pointed away from the clearing, deeper into the forest, toward a direction that rarely appeared on maps. Whoever had taken the rifle didn't run. They walked calmly, deliberately, as though confident Lewis wouldn't follow, or as though they expected someone else would. His unit's voices echoed faintly through the trees, growing closer now. Lewis looked toward them, then back toward the fading trail of the unknown figure. He couldn't be in two places at once. He couldn't track both truth and survival. The forest required choices, and choices left scars. He moved quickly to intercept his unit, emerging from the trees with snow clinging to his uniform. The men looked at him with confusion, questions already forming. But Lewis said nothing. Not yet. Behind him, the unknown trail disappeared under fresh snowfall, as if swallowed by time. Years later, when after-action reports were reviewed and testimonies collected, no official mention was made of the snipers. No record existed of the missing rifle. No document acknowledged an 18-year-old Montford Point Marine who had stopped an unseen ambush with nothing more than a slingshot and the instincts of a hunter. Some claimed the story was exaggerated. Others said it never happened. A few whispered that military intelligence swept it away because the operation in the Ardennes that day involved units that didn't officially exist. And as decades passed, details blurred, memories faded, and evidence remained locked behind closed doors. But one thing never changed. Deep in the Ardennes, when the snow settles into perfect stillness. Some soldiers swear they've seen a faint trail of footprints leading into the trees. Too light to be German, too deliberate to be chance, too persistent to be forgotten. A reminder that in every forest shaped by war, some legends walk quietly, leaving truths that history cannot fully erase. And that is why stories like this matter. Stories buried beneath frost and shadows, carried only by those willing to look deeper. Stories of men who were never meant to be remembered, yet changed the war in ways no one expected. Stories that echo long after the last shot fades. If this story moved you, inspired you, or opened a door to a history rarely told, then now is the perfect moment to join us on WW2 Frontline Legends. Please share this video, like it, and subscribe for more courageous, untold moments that shape the world. And before you go, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from around the world. Your voice keeps these forgotten heroes alive.